welcome to CrimeDivers. I'm Laura.
And I'm Jill.
And welcome to today's episode.
Hello everybody, welcome back for the second part.
Yes, we are back with our second
part of the life and crimes of Shelly Knotek. So if you haven't listened to the first part, then just stop now.
Yep, you better go back and listen to it.
Yeah, go back and listen to last week's episode. So this is part 2.
Uh-huh.
So where did we get to? So we basically talked about Shelly's childhood.
Yep.
And then we got up to, she's had 2 children now, so she's had Nikki and Sammy, and
2 husbands.
She's met Dave Knotek,
Uh-huh.
and they've just got married, haven't they?
Yeah.
So, and I mentioned that her friend Kathy was a witness at her wedding, and we were going to get on to her.
She was going to play a big part
Yes.
in the case.
Okay, so that's basically where we got to. So now we're going to start from them being married.
Okay, shall we dive in?
Let's dive in. So Shelley's dad was happy that she had got married for a 3rd time. So he was hoping that she would stop asking him for money, and he knew that she would badmouth him behind his back, but was nice to his face.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't really have much to do with it anymore because, well, why would you?
No, true. Very true.
She called him because she wanted to tell him about her cancer, because remember, she said that she had cancer.
That's right.
So she was like, well, I have to tell him because I don't want him hearing it from anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But because he didn't really want anything to do with her, he wasn't answering, he wasn't taking her calls. Like now you're all right.
Yeah, no bit bother, thanks very much.
So she ended up writing him a letter, and in the letter it said, quote, "I'll always be so proud to have you as a dad. The older I get, the more I realise how much I appreciate you. Dad, I am so full of pain, I just want out. You've known so little of my life for such a long time. Maybe next time round I won't make the same mistakes. I'm not strong enough to go through the months ahead, but I love you, Dad. I've missed you." End quote. How sick is that? She's not ill. She doesn't have cancer. She's not dying. There's nothing wrong with her. Mm-hmm. She's treated her dad like absolute shit. Uh-huh. She, lied about being raped by him, abused. Mm-hmm. And then she's saying that she's got cancer and she's going to die.
Exactly, and how much she appreciates him. Well, if you appreciate him, you wouldn't have treated him like that all your life.
And you wouldn't now lying to him.
Uh-huh, exactly. So
she's a piece of work.
No, that letter is just part of her sick, twisted plans.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've researched so far, Lara, his wife, did say later on he wasn't a very nice man. Mm-hmm. I haven't read anything bad about him, so I don't know if we're going to get to that because, spoiler alert, still haven't finished.
Still researching
They're still researching this case, so I haven't finished it, so I don't know if we're going to find out anything about him, which, well, from what I remember about hearing the case in the past, I don't remember. Mm-hmm. But, it isn't his story to tell. This is about Shelley, so maybe he wasn't a very nice person, but regardless, he didn't abuse his daughter. Mm-hmm. He didn't rape her. Mm-hmm. So, that is, no matter what else anybody else thinks of him, he didn't deserve that. Nobody deserves that.
No.
And nobody deserves their daughter telling them that they're dying of cancer.
When they're not.
Yeah, exactly. So, Shelley's marriage to Dave was abusive on her side. Mm-hmm. It was apparent that Dave had been made less of a man since being with her. Mm-hmm. Nikki, her eldest daughter, said that he could barely function in his marriage to her mum. One day she even saw him pointing a gun at himself. He was shaking and crying after another argument with Shelley. Shelley would tell him that she hated him and that he disgusted her because he wasn't making enough money and he didn't care enough about the kids. She would tell him that he was a worthless excuse for a husband and that if he loved her and the kids, he would work harder. She was also violent with Dave. She would hit him and push him, but he never touched her. Mm-hmm. He never even shouted back. He never swore at her. Nothing like that. He didn't use the gun. Yeah. Instead, he got in his truck and he went for a drive or whatever to calm down. Yeah. One night after a row, Dave went to stay at his parents' house, and this made Shelley even madder than what she already was. Whatever they'd been rowing about, because she wanted him at home. She wanted control. Mm-hmm. When he wasn't there, that was out of her control. Yeah. And from that day on, she started to isolate him and the girls from his family. Mm-hmm. if they had a row in the car, Shelley would make Dave get out and tell him to walk, no matter how far away they were from where they were, where they were going. It got to a point where he was walking on eggshells around her. He was nervous. He was scared. He couldn't sleep. He never knew when she was just going to snap. And he started avoiding her whenever he could. He started sleeping in his car, or he would camp out somewhere. He would just take his tent and go and camp out to get away from her. And when he came back from doing that, she would be nice to him, and that would last like a few days or a few weeks, but of course it never lasted long. But she needed to get him back into her good books, and like them all be nicey, and he'd be like, oh, maybe she's not such a bad person after all, and classic abuse, isn't it?
And then she'd start again.
Yeah, and then she'd start again. It never lasted long. At some point they had a house fire, so they had to move. So they moved into a bigger house. It was at the end of a long private drive, and it had like farmland and like a forest around it, so it was pretty private. So by now, Shelley wasn't only abusive to Dave, she was also abusive to her daughters, Nikki and Sammy. Anything could be a weapon. When she was angry, she would grab like the nearest thing to her to beat them with.
Right.
For instance, what have I got at the side of me? I've got a lamp at the side of me.
Yeah.
Just have, she's mad about something, she could pick up the lamp, whack them.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrendous.
Totally.
And the discipline would often come at night, so they might have done something wrong, or not necessarily wrong, but what she thought was wrong.
Yeah.
And Shelley wouldn't punish them straight away. She would seethe for hours. So the more she seethed, she would get angrier and angrier. And so if she had just punished them at that moment, it wouldn't have been as bad. But she would wait until they were in their beds asleep, and then she would drag them outside and beat them. And they learned to wear extra clothes in bed just in case this was going to happen, because it was cold outside.
Yeah.
So like a lot of the time they didn't even know what they had done, because it would be for the trivialist of things.
It's probably like something ridiculous.
Yeah.
They didn't even think was bad, but she obviously hung on to that. And
yeah. So they didn't know when it was coming, so they would just put the clothes on just in case in bed.
Yeah.
And imagine trying to go to sleep, not knowing if you were going to be able to sleep right through till the next morning, or you were going to get dragged out your bed and beaten up in the middle of the night.
That is terrible.
I know. One time Shelley pushed Nikki into a wardrobe shouting, "You fucking little bitch." She then jumped on her and she was punching her and kicking her, and Nikki was screaming, "I'm sorry, I won't do it again." But she didn't actually even know what she had done wrong.
So she was like apologising for something.
She didn't even know, and she was literally beating her up. Nikki managed to get up and she ran for the door, but Shelley grabbed her, swung her around and threw her up against the wall, where Nikki's head hit a nail. So it was only then, when Nikki's head was literally nailed to the wall, that she left her alone, that she stopped this attack.
Wow.
I mean, this is her daughter. Like, horrendous.
That's awful.
The abuse wasn't always physical. One year, a week before Christmas, Shelley locked Nikki in her room and told her that she was worthless and she wouldn't amount to anything. She told her she was a fucking loser and she made her feel sick. But yet, on Christmas Day, Shelley acted like everything was normal. She was happy. She was in the Christmas spirit. She was singing Christmas songs. Like, obviously made dinner. And, like, she had bought and wrapped loads of presents for the girls. And the girls had an amazing day. They were like, all these, it's like on Christmas morning when you get all these presents, you're like, what am I getting? But yeah, a couple of days after Christmas, Shelley took all the presents back, and she told the girls that they were ungrateful and they didn't deserve anything.
Wow.
Like,
that's harsh.
That's putting it lightly.
Well,
I mean, can you imagine? You remember as a young child at Christmas getting all these amazing presents.
Yeah. And then for somebody
to take them away from you a couple of days later, before you've even got a chance to play with them all.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
And somebody's taking them away, telling you that you don't deserve them. I mean, that must, like, psychologically, that must really fuck with your head, basically. The girls were only allowed showers when Shelley said they could. And she told them that it was a privilege to have a shower, so obviously it wasn't happening very often. So they often had to go to school unwashed, and of course they hated it. I mean, who wants to be the dirty, smelly child at school? And sometimes they even sneaked a shower when she wasn't in, so they would like get in the shower, they would quickly have a shower, and then they'd have to wipe down like all the walls, the floor, and everything, make sure that
like it was dry.
Just to make themselves clean.
That's
I mean,
awful.
I know what it's like to have young kids, and a lot of the time you have to tell them to go and get a bath or a shower. You're like, right, you need a wash, go and do it. So for them to actually be that bad that they knew they had to sneak off and do it is awful. And they also had to ask before using the toilet as well.
Really?
I know.
That's awful.
Yeah, if you need to go, you need to go.
Yeah, it's not like you're in school where you have to ask to leave the classroom to go to the toilet. If you need to go, you need to go. And you should be able to just go when you need to go.
Exactly. Shelley came up with a new punishment for Nikki, and she called it wallowing.
Wallowing.
Yeah. So, and I actually just want to say, having written this down, and I'm as I was kind of researching, I'm not sure if I did actually. I don't think I actually have written it down, but basically, Sammy, the younger girl, she was abused as well, but it was Nikki that got the worst of it, and it ended up that Sammy, a lot of the time, she would end up telling on Nikki, so that she wouldn't get punished as badly, which you can't blame her for. They're children.
Yeah.
I mean, she loved her sister. They loved each other, but if she, she was treated better. She was still abused, but she was treated better, and Nikki did come off the worst. And as as I said, like with Sammy, if she told her mum, then her mum would treat her.
Yeah.
Would maybe treat her to something nice, or so it is understandable. So. Yeah, so wallowing. It was her way of showing that she was in control of all of the family. Wallowing was done at night, and it was done in all seasons. Didn't matter whether it was hot, cold, all seasons. It began with Shelley putting the bedroom light, or going into Nikki's bedroom, putting the light on and shouting, "Get up, clothes off, get the fuck downstairs. You're a worthless piece of shit." And she would force Nikki to go downstairs naked. She would go outside and she had to squat in the mud. And Dave would spray her with the hose as instructed by Shelley. So you can imagine how cold that would be. She would say things like, "Make her wallow, Dave. She's a pig, Dave. Teach her a lesson." And Dave would have to say, "Wallow, Nikki," because Dave was
just under her control.
Yeah, he was being abused as well. And then Shelley would drag Nikki to the bathroom and fill the bath with only hot water, no cold water in it, so it was burning hot, and tell her to clean herself up. Again, calling her a pig before she sent her to bed.
Lovely. That's awful.
And Sammy, she would watch what was happening out of her window, and she felt guilty, but she knew that she was better off than Nikki.
Yeah.
That her punishments were never as bad as Nikki's, and she knew that wasn't fair. None of it was fair. Neither of them deserved these punishments, but she can understand why Nikki got it worse than what she did.
Yeah, but in some ways, I'm sure she probably was, in a roundabout way, she would have been
relieved,
or grateful that it wasn't happening as bad. But
of course,
I'm sure that still made it horrific to see her big sister go through that.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have wanted that, but on the same token, she would naturally have a sense of relief.
Saying, "I'm glad that's not me."
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
And you can't blame her for feeling like that, because I think everybody would probably feel like that. They'd feel awful for the person that's happening, but selfishly there's a sense of, well, thank God that's not me.
Well,
I'm feeling.
Everybody, I mean, if you think about it, we all do it. I mean, when there's always somebody worse off than ourselves, and while you can feel sorry for just say the war going on, you can feel sorry for the people in this situation, the people in Ukraine and Russia and whatnot, but you're glad that you're not there.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like that.
It's just normal, isn't it?
Yeah. So Shelley had a nephew called Shane. So remember our younger brother Paul, that was his son, because obviously he's grown up by now.
Yeah.
So Paul had been in and out of prison, and Shelley had wanted to adopt Shane for years, but Dave didn't want it because he was already struggling financially, as Shelley didn't work and just spent money like it was going out of fashion. But Shelley had kept in touch with her nephew Shane, and she would send him cards and letters saying how much they all loved him. So to Shane, she seemed like a loving auntie, because she'd send him letters saying, "Oh, we all miss you, and can't wait to see you and give you a hug," and all this kind of stuff. So in 1988, when Shane was 13, he had nowhere else to go, so he ended up going to live with the Knoteks. So as I said, his dad, Paul, he was in and out of prison and had abandoned Shane and his mum, who had many problems, including severe substance abuse. So I don't know what the situation was with her, but she wasn't in a position to be able to look after Shane.
Right.
So, as I said, Shane was 13, Nikki was 14 by this point, and Sammy was 10. And, Nikki and Sammy hoped that things would be better at home with Shane being there, because they're like, somebody else our age.
Yeah.
maybe, I don't know, because he was male, maybe they thought that would be different because, you know, typically males, they think a male would be stronger and maybe be able to defend them. And despite having a rough childhood, like, Shane was always smiling. He had lots of friends, like, girls loved him. He must have been quite, you know, good looking and, you know, like, girls loved him and whatnot. So they were like, great, you know, somebody happy in her home, like, it'll maybe change. So Shelley applied for benefits to take care of him. She bought him, like, some new clothes for school and, like, made up a nice bedroom. They had a basement in their house, so she made it into a nice bedroom for him.
Right.
And he started calling Shelley and Dave mum and dad, which I'm sure she probably put him up to that because...
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, all things were good to start off with. So, when Shane thought he was going to have a nice, comfortable, easy life, he was unfortunately wrong. Soon after he moved in, Shelley just, you know...
Started our usual.
Yeah, just got back to her usual self. She got him to... I don't know what I've written here. She made him, like, start doing chores, right? Like, basically having to do everything around the house and stuff. So, like, he barely got any time to relax. Like, if he wasn't at school, he was at home, like, I don't know, cleaning out the yard. Like, I don't know what kind of chores, but basically, she put him to work. She made him do everything, and he soon found out about her temper and her punishments, and he became afraid of her just like the rest of the family. If he didn't do things up to her standard, then Shelley would take things from his room. So first she took his pillow away, and then she took his blanket away, and then his bed. So then basically he was just sleeping on a bare mattress on the floor. So it started off with a nice bedroom. Now he's just in the basement on a bare mattress.
And then taking it all
away. He had only been allowed to shower once a fortnight, but Shelley soon took that privilege away, so he wasn't getting washed at all. And she took away his clothes, so he only had one set of clothes. Like, that's awful. I know.
That's terrible.
So Lara, you know, Shelley's stepmom, or, you know, I mean, she really was her mum. Like, it was just to remind you who she was. But, you know,
I remember who she was.
Shelley's mum would occasionally visit them, but quite often nobody would be home when she got there, even though the visit had been arranged. So she would call and say, right, I'm coming to visit. All right, okay. And then Shelley would go out, take the kids out. Sometimes she just left gifts for them, like, on the doorstep, and other times she waited for hours, like, for them to get home, and Shelley always had some bullshit excuse. Soon after Shane moved in, Lara went to visit, and this time they were actually in. So remember this. So Lara is Shane's grandmother as well as the girls.
Yeah.
So she spent time in her granddaughter's room with them, which their rooms were immaculate. You know, everyone looked great, like a normal teenager, whatever, bedroom. And Shelley just stayed downstairs watching the TV. So Lara then decided to make her way down to the basement because she wanted to go and see Shane and see what his room was like and everything, because this is the first time she'd visited. And all of a sudden, like, she started walking down to the basement and Shelley was right behind her. You know, whereas I fine go and look at the girls' rooms, but as soon as she was going down to Shane's room, she was right behind her. So as she walked down the stairs, Lara could hardly breathe as the smell of diesel oil that was used to heat the house was so strong, and even her eyes were watering because they had, like, a furnace room down there. And the furnace room was right next to Shane's bedroom, but Shelley said that there was something wrong with it. It's not usually that strong. It was.
Right, okay.
But she said it wasn't usually that... Yeah, it's not usually that bad. So she said somebody was coming to fix it. So Lara was like, right, okay. And Lara was horrified when she saw that Shane didn't have a bed, didn't have a wardrobe. So she's like, look, if you don't get any money, you know... Here's some money. Go and buy him the stuff. You know, that's my grandson.
Yeah,
so
make him a nice bedroom. Yeah,
make him a nice bedroom. Here's the money to go and get him what he needs. And Shelley did actually get him a new bed because she maybe thought,
I better.
You know, maybe. But she, if Lara hadn't kicked up a fuss about it, I doubt she would have. Yeah. So Shelley continued to abuse her kids, Shane included now. He had been beaten and also been made to wallow. So it wasn't just Nikki who was wallowing, it was him as well. She would call him every name under the sun, and as she didn't like that Nikki and Shane were close, she would give them punishments to humiliate them even more. So she would tell them to take off their clothes in the living room, and make them slow dance naked until she said they could stop. I mean, these kids are teenagers, you know, we're talking like 13 and 14 years old. They're cousins.
They're obviously going through things like puberty and stuff as well.
Exactly. You know, along with this just being so wrong, they would have also been at the stage in their lives when their bodies would have been changing, you know, as you said, puberty. They would have been, like, awkward and shy, you know, because, you know, like, girls, they're getting curves, or maybe their boobs are growing, you know, and for both, like, you're getting the hair, you know, like, you're shy about your body. I mean, when you start, your body starts developing, most kids, I would assume, well, I was anyway, even in front of my mum, you know, who usually when you're a kid, you're running about naked in front of your mum, you don't care, but then you get to that stage where you're like, right, I'm just going to start covering myself up now.
Yeah, you get a bit more private about it.
Yeah, so they were having to do this with each other. Sammy was made to watch, so, you know, 10-year-old Sammy was made to watch. Dave would just sit there and say nothing, while these two teenagers were awkwardly slow dancing, naked.
Just wrong.
Horrendous.
Absolutely
horrendous.
That's terrible.
One winter day when Nikki and Shane got home from school, Shelly screamed at them, like, take your clothes off now. And it was freezing that day. I mean, there was snow on the ground. That's how cold it was. There was snow on the ground. But Shelly told them to go to the hill behind the house, behind their house, and sit there on the hill with their backs to each other. And she left them for hours till eventually she let them back in the house. So they were sitting on a hill, naked.
In the snow.
In the snow. Just sitting there for hours.
What does she get with that?
Humiliation, I think. Control.
That's awful.
So, remember I told you about Kathy Loreno. She was Shelley's best friend and hairdresser.
Yes.
She was a witness at their wedding.
Yeah.
We were getting back to her later. So she would come over and she had no idea about the abuse, you know, because obviously in front of other people, this was the perfect family, you know, they were great. So, and Sammy loved her, like she would do Sammy's hair, like the, you know, spiral perms, you're probably too young for that, but spiral perms were in fashion back then, and she, so, you know, she was a hairdresser, so she would do Sammy's hair, and she would do Sammy's friends' hair, they would come over and she'd do their hair, so, you know, she was great. So Nikki and Shane weren't so keen though, as, you know, they said she was bossy, but then she would come over and babysit, so I think they thought, you know, we're teenagers, we don't need a babysitter. And Shelley would tell Kathy to sort of be like a parent to them and tell them what to do and what not to do, and they were like, but we don't need this. So I think that they weren't so keen on her. But there was nothing wrong with Kathy. She was a lovely woman. That was just their teenage way of through their teenage eyes. At Christmas 1988, Shelley was pregnant with her third child. So they were all happy and excited about a new baby coming. You know, like, they all thought this was great, the kids included. And Dave couldn't believe that he was going to have a child of his own at last, because, like, he hadn't expected to be a dad, because he didn't think that Shelley would be able to get pregnant, because she was on chemotherapy, remember?
Oh yes, I forgot she was dying.
Yeah, she's got cancer, she's having chemotherapy. So to him, this baby was a miracle, so you can imagine how happy, all of them must have been. And then Shelley announced that someone else was moving in, so we're not only having a baby, but somebody else is moving in as well. 30-year-old Kathy.
Okay.
So she hadn't even told Dave, so he was just as shocked as the kids were. They were like, what the hell? Like, why? So she said that Kathy's family didn't want her, so she needed somewhere to live, and she was going to help her with the new baby. Kathy, she'd lost her job. Maybe she's a hairdresser. She'd lost her job, and she'd also lost her house. So she'd had to move back into her mum's house, and her mum expected her to pay rent, but she didn't have any money to pay rent because she didn't have a job.
Right.
So Shelley offered her a roof over her head. She jumped at the chance. Dave didn't even bother to try and protest because, you know, he knew it wouldn't make any difference. There was a space, like, between Nikki and Sammy's room, which they had used as a playroom. So Shelley and Dave made up a bedroom for Kathy there.
Right.
So Kathy had lost her job at the hair salon, and she was just in a shitty place right now, and she just couldn't thank Shelley and Dave enough for being so good to her. Which, put yourself in that position. You know, like, if somebody did that for you, like, you can move in, you will make a room for you. Like, you would be so grateful. And Shelly told Kathy that she didn't need to work, that they would look after her. She needed help with the baby.
Right,
so, you know, she didn't have to worry about money.
Yeah.
Rent-free.
Else?
Didn't have to work. Everyone would be paid for her. You know, and it'd be fun living together. So Kathy moved in and she worshipped Shelly. She would like hang on every word. And she would tell the kids that they had a wonderful mum and she couldn't understand why they didn't do more to help her. Because she wasn't seeing seeing the abuse, so she didn't know any better. She thought her best friend was a wonderful person, wonderful mother, wonderful friend, wonderful wife.
Little did she know.
Well, she's obviously going to find out.
Yeah.
Shelley had told Kathy that Nikki and Shane were a handful. She said that Nikki was defiant and Shane was incorrigible. So anytime that Kathy thought that the kids were like being a bit cheeky or whatever, she would pull them up and tell them off.
Right.
Because she already had this preconceived, idea of what they were like. She didn't know them as kids yet. She just
thought they were just typical teenagers.
Just being shitheads, basically. They were always in trouble with them, like Shelley told them, they're always getting into trouble and whatnot. So Kathy just assumed that they were horrible kids, and she actually thought she was helping Shelley by disciplining them. Obviously, she wasn't disciplining them
the same way
in Shelley's way. She was just telling them off and
just like normal, probably.
Yeah,
people would do.
Yeah, exactly. So when Shelley went into labour, she told Dave that Kathy was driving her to hospital and he could drive behind them. And I was like, lovely. He couldn't believe that he was going to be, he wasn't going to be driving his wife. Remember, he is ecstatic. This is his baby, this miracle baby.
Yeah.
Why the hell am I not getting to drive my own wife to the hospital? But no, she was like, no, Kathy's doing it.
Oh.
So he went along behind them, and their daughter, so they had a daughter called Tori. She was born in June 1989, and surprisingly, Dave actually got to hold his daughter first before Kathy did, so that was something.
That was nice,
I thought that was nice of them. So Shelley told everyone that Tori was premature with undeveloped lungs, but she'd actually only been a week early.
Right.
So, but she's going she's a preemie. No, she's not. She's born a week early.
That's not.
That's fine. That's not a preemie.
No, definitely not.
One day after they'd got home, Shelley told the family that Tori had stopped breathing, but she had managed to revive her. And the next day, she and Kathy took Tori to the hospital, and she stayed there under observation for a week. She told her other daughters that because Tori had been early, she had a heart problem, and when she came home from the hospital, she had a heart monitor and a special bed. So every night, for a while, the girls would wake up in the night with the sounds of the alarms going off, from the monitor that Tori had.
Oh yeah.
And their mum panicking and cuddling Tori, and they would run downstairs and they'd be like, "Is she okay?" They'd be terrified. And Shelley, she's fine now, I've saved her. So she seemed to revel in being a hero, and saving her youngest and assuring her older girls that mummy's, mummy did that, mummy, it's alright, mummy's got her, mummy's fixed her, she's fine. She was constantly saving the baby. But one night, Nikki went downstairs to find her mum holding a pillow over Tori's face. Shelley jumped and she's like, she's okay now, she's okay now. With a startled expression on her face. Basically, Nikki had arrived too early, the alarms hadn't gone off yet, so she had been stopping Tori from breathing.
Right.
So that's why the alarms were going off.
Right.
And then she would, obviously cuddle and, do whatever she had to do to bring her back to life, but to get her to start breathing again.
Right.
But obviously the kids hadn't seen that part of it, they just saw her saving her.
So she was actually doing that.
She was the one who was actually stopping Tori from breathing.
That's awful.
So I'm assuming that the hospital must have just gave them that monitor as a precaution because there wasn't anything wrong with
unless she
Tori.
manipulated it so that they thought that she needed that.
Well, maybe she's done the same in hospital. She's been hooked up because she's been on observation.
Yeah, possibly.
And then she stopped the baby from breathing and alarms have went off in the hospital.
Yeah.
So maybe the hospital did think there was something wrong with her. Yeah. So from then on, Nikki and Sammy kept a close eye on their little sister. They imagine not trusting your mum to look after her own child.
Exactly, you should be able to.
Yeah, and after a few weeks, Shelley just went back to what she liked doing most, sitting in front of the TV, and Kathy and the older girls did most of the caregiving to Tori, which is
Probably better.
Was better, yeah. So Dave thought Shelley was a great mum, though, I don't know why. I don't know what he was seeing, but he...
The thing is, he's obviously witnessed and had to participate in the abuse that he's done to our other kids, so would he not be... Alright, would he not be worried that might happen to Tori? Because I would be.
Well, you would think so, yeah. But maybe because he was thinking that she was saving Tori all this time, that's why she's a great mum. Because she kept saving her daughter.
Maybe.
And in his words, she was excellent with the baby. Mm-hmm. So he obviously had no idea. Maybe he just wasn't there very much. I have no idea. On birthdays, Shelley liked to make a big deal of birthdays. She would give the girls lots of presents. She would have parties for them, put on a big show. Mm-hmm. And on Sammy's next birthday, Shelley gave her a popple. Do you remember popples? I kind of vaguely remember them, but I had to look it up, and it's like a toy. And I think if you turn it inside out, it's like
a reversible.
But no, I think it's if you turn it inside out, it would be in a sort of an egg or something, right. Maybe.
No idea.
I'm sure we had popples here.
Don't remember.
But then again, maybe you're too young, because this was the 80s.
Yeah, I was born in the mid-80s.
Yeah,
so.
I didn't have one.
Right.
But I'm sure I heard it. It doesn't matter. She wanted a popple because this was along the lines of. This was the toy that was in fashion at the time, when Care Bears were in, or Cabbage Patch Dolls were in, or whatever. This year it was popples that were in. Every child wanted a popple.
Right.
So this was amazing. Our mum bought her a popple, so this was a good present.
Okay.
So she was delighted. And then Kathy, she gave Sammy a gold necklace, and it had a heart pendant on it, and she loved it. She'd never had proper jewellery before. This was proper, I'm a big girl, this is grown up jewellery.
Yeah.
And because she loved Kathy, it meant a lot to her, because she's like, oh my god, she's got me something really nice and what's the word?
Sentimental.
That's it. I knew it began with an S. I was thinking sympathy. No, that's not it. Yeah, so it was a sentimental kind of present. Mm-hmm. So she was having a lovely day. She's got a great present for her mum, great present for Kathy. She's having a party, so her friends were around and everything. But then Shelley asked which was her favourite present.
Oh, God.
So Sammy said it was the necklace from Kathy. No, I know. So once everyone had left, Shelley beat Sammy with a belt and shouted at her that she was an ungrateful brat and that she had given her lovely presents and she'd arranged a party for her. Basically the present from her should have been her favourite. So she beat that poor little... the birthday girl.
That's awful.
I know. So from then on, all the kids had to remember that their best present came from their mum.
Yeah. No matter what.
No matter what. So Lara and Les, I put Lara and Wes. Lara and Les, they had divorced at some point. Shelley's parents. Yeah. They had divorced at some point. And one day Shelley called Lara and told her that she had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she said that she was getting treatment, but she was made sure that Lara realised how serious this was. Mm-hmm. But then a few days later, Shelley called Lara again and told her that actually the doctors had made a mistake, and it wasn't non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, it was actually cancer of the pituitary gland. Mm-hmm. And Lara was astounded the doctors could make such a big mistake and change the diagnosis in the middle of a treatment plan. She was like, what? Mm-hmm. She asked Shelley about the treatment, and Shelley said it was pretty bad and she didn't know how much time she had left, and she was going to see a specialist. Right. So Lara offered to go to Shelley's and help out with the kids, while she was having the treatment. And Shelley said, no, it's fine. She had Kathy to help out. So over the next few weeks, Kathy would call Lara to let her know that Shelley was doing okay with her treatment and that the girls were doing really well. Lara said that Kathy was just wonderful. She was looking after the kids, she was cleaning the house, she was cooking, so Kathy was doing everything. Mm-hmm. But one day when Lara was talking to Nikki on the phone, she heard screaming in the background, and she was like, Nikki, what's going on? And Nikki was like, oh, that's just Mum being mad at Kathy again. So by this time, Shelley had obviously stopped using her charm on Kathy and was beginning to abuse her as well as everybody else. Mm-hmm. So Shelley's cancer treatments seemed to be going on and on and on. They were going on for a long time. And Lara started to get suspicious. I think she actually worked in the medical field.
Right, okay.
So she spoke to friends that were doctors, and she was, sort of telling them Shelley's symptoms and her vague explanation of treatment. And they couldn't make sense of it. So one day Lara called Shelley and asked her again for details about her condition. And Shelley was vague. So Lara, she lost her temper and she says, "Do you know what? I'm sick of this cancer crap. I've talked to some doctors and we think you're lying." And Shelley just slammed the phone down.
Wow, that's what she's found out.
Yeah, so a few minutes later, Kathy called Lara and told her, "You've really upset Shelley."
Right.
And Lara told Kathy, "Look, it's a load of bullshit. She has not got cancer. She's lying." And then Dave came on the phone and he shouted at Lara saying, like, what kind of mother are you? Like, Shelley's going through the fight of her life and you don't care about her. So Lara asked Dave if he had been taking Shelley to the doctors. And he was like, "Yeah, of course I have." And she's like, "Right, well, have you been actually going in with her, or have you been like sitting outside in the car?" Or and he says, "No, like I've been in the waiting room. Like I've been sitting in the waiting room. Shelley's too proud for me to go in and see the actual doctor. So I've been sitting in the waiting room."
Right.
He had been sitting waiting for her for 8 hours each time she went to the doctor, the hospital or whatever, for her treatment. He was sitting in the waiting room for 8 hours waiting for her having her treatment.
Yeah.
But Lara was like, "It doesn't take that long." And she said, "Well, have you got any bills from the insurance company?" And he said, "No, like Shelley opens all the mail. I don't see things like that because Shelley does everything." And Dave just couldn't be swayed. He believed fully that Shelley had cancer and that she would never lie about something like that. So he ended up hanging up on Lara.
Where was she for the hours?
Well, Lara suspected that Shelley had just slipped out another door of the hospital and probably just went shopping or went to the movies or something.
Yeah, left him sitting in
the waiting room.
Wow.
And on one hand, I can understand why he couldn't be swayed because, let's face it, if my husband was to tell me he had cancer, of course I would believe him. And if somebody said he was lying, I wouldn't, no, my husband, but knowing what she was like, you would think maybe he would have an inkling because she's obviously lied about things before.
Well, exactly.
And the way that she treats people and... But that's just the way it was. He wouldn't be swayed. And Kathy too, she couldn't be swayed either. She fully believed that Shelley had cancer and she did everything she could around the house to make things easier for her. Kathy had been a larger-than-life, happy, funny, friendly woman who played softball. She went to church every Sunday. She knew a lot of people because obviously she's a hairdresser. You know, hairdressers know everybody, don't they?
Yeah, they certainly do.
But after moving in with the Knoteks, her friends noticed that she just started fading away. Like her personality just dissolved more and more every time they saw her.
Yeah.
By now it was because whatever Shelley wanted, Shelley got, and she was just wearing Kathy down. Shelley was never satisfied, and she would often grab whatever was nearest to hand and hit Kathy with it, as she did with the kids. And when Kathy threatened to leave, Shelley would tell her it was her fault and she forced her to do it. She would tell her that she needed her, so you know she should just do as she was told, and then everyone would be fine.
Yeah.
And Kathy would apologise. She was the one who was apologising. And Shelley would be like, "Okay, I forgive you."
Yeah, when it was actually her that was obviously causing it.
That's
shocking.
She would give her a hug and she would give her a bunch of pills. We'll get back to that as well.
Right.
So the kids would see all this, and although Nikki hated what her mum was doing to Kathy, she was also a bit relieved because, like Sammy earlier, it was taking the heat off her, so Nikki wasn't getting all these really bad punishments because Kathy was getting it now. And obviously Shane had been getting it as well, so it was Nikki was doing quite well, like Sammy had been before.
Exactly.
Obviously still being abused, but just nowhere near as bad. So on one day, the kids watched Shelley yelling at Kathy for taking and eating a lemon meringue pie. Do you remember we made one?
Yeah.
Oh, that was lovely.
It was. I love it. I do like lemon meringue.
Oh, I love that. I've not had it for years, actually. Anyway, sorry. I was accusing Kathy of taking and eating it. Kathy was crying and she's like, I didn't take the pie. And Shelley was like, "Well, you just don't remember." And she told her that she'd been sleepwalking and that she knew she had taken the pie because she'd found it half eaten under Kathy's bed. So Kathy was adamant she did not put it there. She was like, no, like, I don't sleepwalk. Like, no, I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
But Shelley just kept saying, you don't remember putting it there. And the truth was that Nikki had actually seen her mum put in the pie under Kathy's bed. So, although we already knew that.
Oh yeah, I was going to say, we didn't need her to tell us that. We didn't know that was the case.
And Kathy would also hide and then discover sweetie wrappers, and she would tell Kathy that she wasn't losing weight because she was eating too much. And Kathy was just confused, and surely she hadn't been sleepwalking, and she hadn't been eating all this stuff that Shelley was accusing her of. And over the next few weeks, Shelley kept making these discoveries of like half-eaten food under Kathy's bed,
right,
and kept accusing Kathy of sleep eating and eating all of their food at night. But this was classic Shelley. She used to do it to Nikki as well. She would accuse, not necessarily eating and stuff like that, but she would accuse Nikki of things, and Nikki would be like, I don't remember, I didn't do that. But Shelley would tell her that she didn't remember. I'm sure you do that with me sometimes.
Not quite in the same way, though.
Not in the same way, but you're like, you did do that, and I'm like, no, I didn't.
But
no,
you did.
And I'm like, no. But anyway, like, yeah, I mean, shouldn't be laughing, because it is really bad. She would be saying that Nikki was doing these things, and sometimes Nikki actually believed that, oh, maybe I did forget that I'd done something. So she would, this was just a classic thing that Shelley did.
Mm-hmm.
One day Shelley told Kathy that she had caught her sleepwalking naked in Shane's room the night before.
Right.
Kathy was obviously mortified and didn't believe it. Shelley told her that she knew she wanted Shane, but it had to stop, but she didn't want that kind of thing going on in her house. Kathy was in her 30s and Shane was just a young teenager, and she was horrified that anyone would think that she wanted anything to do with a young boy.
Mm-hmm.
So like, she was so upset, and she said no, she would never have done that. But yet Shelley went and got Shane and made him tell Kathy that yes, he had seen her naked the night before in his room. Kathy was confused and she was crying, and she ran off to her room like totally bawling her eyes out, upset, because
well, yes,
who wants to be accused of something like that?
No, exactly.
And she was just embarrassed, and But Shane later told Nikki that it wasn't true, but he had to go along with Shelley because he was so scared
to get beaten.
Yeah, of what she would do to him. So it's horrendous. Mm-hmm. One day, Kathy had done something to piss off Shelley, probably something so trivial that she didn't even know what it was, that she kicked Kathy down the stairs. She literally put her foot in her back and just shoved her down the stairs. Wow. And Kathy just lay in a heap at the bottom of the stairs while Shelley told her that she was so stupid and so clumsy. And then Shelley started taking away Kathy's stuff. She told her that she was bad and that she had to learn to live with less. She started taking away the family photos that Kathy had brought with her. Then she loved music. She had quite a lot of records, because records back then.
Back in the day,
I know. I feel old. Yeah. And she took away her records. Then she took away her knitting supplies. Then she took away her clothes, and all she was left her with was a pair of knickers, a bra, and a dress. Yeah. And it was one of these dresses, a muumuu. Do you know what a muumuu is? It's like a Hawaiian. You know, if you think of like Moana, was she Hawaiian? Yeah. Think of the sort of dresses that the granny wears and stuff like that. It's looks like, to me, it looks like maybe a sort of night dress.
Right, yeah.
But it's a dress that you would wear.
Yeah.
I think they call it like a house dress kind of thing,
right,
you know.
Okay.
And then days later, she took the dress, and then a few more days later, she took the underwear as well. So Kathy was left with nothing, not a scrap of clothing. So she had to do all the chores around the house naked.
Oh my God.
She had to ask permission to use the toilet. She had to ask permission to either have a bath or a shower. And in time, if she wanted a bath or a shower, if she wanted a wash, it had to be done outside with the garden hose.
Oh, for God's sake, that's awful.
So, and this just became normal to the kids. They didn't even bat an eyelid when they were like watching TV and Kathy was doing the housework around them naked. And like Shelley was pretty much leaving the kids alone now, but that came at a price because she started making the kids participate in Kathy's punishments.
Oh God.
She would make Nikki and Sammy like snap elastic bands at Kathy as she was walking down the stairs. So remember, she was naked.
Yeah.
She was weak. She wasn't walking fast enough. So Shelley would make them stand on the landing and say, "Get her!" And they would be like pinging elastic bands at her.
That's awful.
And they would do it because...
well, they were scared for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She often told Shane to kick and punch Kathy, and he reluctantly ended up having to do it because when he did refuse at first. He had been forced to wallow. They had also been duct taped naked to the wall and made to sleep on the concrete floor naked with no blanket. So
No.
You know, that's
It's
not
hard.
surprising.
I know, because you can't really blame them in a way, because, I mean, they obviously don't want to do those things, but then what they get as
The
a punishment,
consequences,
the
yeah.
of not doing it, I mean,
They're horrendous.
they're in a rock and a hard place. Do you know what I mean? They've
Definitely.
got, they either do it and, poor Kathy gets it
Mm-hmm.
and they're all right, or if they refuse to do it, then they get the punishment. So, I mean, unfortunately, as a human being, like,
You'd rather it was happening to somebody
exactly,
else. Yeah, of course.
You obviously don't want it to happen to yourself, so sadly, they've had to make that choice, and it's terrible that they're in that position, obviously.
Now, if anyone came over, Shelley would shut Kathy in her cupboard, and sometimes she would be there for hours and hours. She lost weight, her body was always scratched and bruised. Shelley had cut off all her long hair, so of course Shelley didn't want to see her. She didn't want anyone to see her. I mean, she had long. I mean, she was a hairdresser. Mm-hmm. She had long, beautiful hair. She looked after her hair, and Shelley just went and grabbed a pair of scissors. I think she actually put a bowl in her head and just haphazardly just cut it. So it wasn't even as if it was a nice cut. But actually, thinking back to it, just something else that I didn't actually write down. But Grandma Anna, the bully, had actually done something similar to Shelley when she was younger. She had long, beautiful hair when she was younger, and she cut off her hair. But that was to punish Lara, her mum, because she told Lara that she wasn't looking after Shelley's hair.
Right. Okay.
So she cut it all off. So,
she also got it from there.
Right. Where were we? So the Knoteks would go away camping sometimes, and in the first year of Kathy living with them, they took her too. Kathy had to ride in the boot of the car though, because there wasn't any room for her in the car, so she would ride in the boot. And when they got to their camping spot, she wasn't allowed to participate in the fun stuff. She was just there to wait on them hand and foot.
Sick.
She wasn't allowed to sleep in the tent either. So the first night, because I think they were just away for a weekend, so the first night she slept under the car. And then the second night, Shelley put her in the car boot and made her sleep there.
Lovely.
And so the morning when she got out the following morning, I don't think she had it shut properly. I think she'd left her, a little bit of air. But when she just collapsed because obviously she'd been sleeping. She would have been
surprised.
She wouldn't have been able to stretch out, would she? She would have been all cramped in. Shelley was so lazy she did nothing around the house, and when the laundry built up so much that no one had any clean clothes left, which I'm surprised people actually had clothes, she told Nicky and Sammy to go to the laundrette to wash them and to take Kathy with them. Kathy had to ride in the boot, and she wasn't allowed to get out. So even while they were inside the laundrette using 6 washing machines and dryers, so you can imagine how long that would have took, Kathy was left in the boot of the car. The kids couldn't understand why Kathy was so compliant. Like, why didn't she complain? Like, why didn't she try to get away? When she was in the boot of the car or, like, stuck in the cupboard, why didn't she try to get out? Kathy had been a happy, lively woman, as I said earlier, with lots of opinions, and she was in no way a pushover before, so why was she like this now? And this is coming back to the pills. Nicky and Shane thought it must have been the pills. Because they kept seeing Shelley giving them to Kathy. So one day when Shelley was out and Kathy was doing chores, they went into Shelley's room and they had a look about. And there were a few pill bottles on top of her drawers and in the bathroom cabinet. It basically looked like a chemist with the amount of pills that were there. And they found a few different things, like sort of things that you would take to calm you down, like for like anxiety and things like that. And they found Prozac.
Right.
So this is what they realised that she had been given Kathy, because they recognised what the pill looked like, and it was Prozac. So it's no wonder that Kathy had no fight in her, because Shelley was giving her like a few at a time. So
she'd have been like well spaced.
Like I'm surprised she was actually able to be able to have any energy to get up and do anything, because Prozac's meant to relax you, isn't it? So Nicky and Shane would always talk about running away, but Nicky could never bring herself to try. Shane did though. He ran away a few times, but each time Shelley would do exactly what she did before with her husband. Like, she would pile the girls in the car and go searching for him, and she always found him and brought him back. So then, of course, she would punish him when she got him back. So one time she got the duct tape and some icy hot. You go to the US. I was going to say, you go to America. We're not supposed to say. Oh no, that was a Patreon episode. Never mind. Cut out. You go to the United States a lot. So do you know what icy hot is?
No.
Neither did I. So I looked it up. So it's like you put it on your skin, and it's like it's cool and then it's warm, and it's like to help to relieve minor pain. So I think it sounds like maybe a mix of our deep heat in our deep freeze.
Right, okay.
Because we in the UK we have a deep heat and deep freeze, so you can either be hot or cold. But this one has a mixture of both.
Right, okay.
So I think it's that kind of thing.
Right, okay. Nope, never heard of that.
No.
Might have to look for it when I'm there.
So I actually feel bad for mentioning that Patreon thing and then not explaining what I meant. So basically, just quickly, I'll put it in here on a Patreon episode. I was telling Laura that I watched this guy on TikTok who from the USA, and he was asking why we say that if you live in the United States, why do we say you live in America? Because he and a lot of people around him don't say that. They say that they live in the United States, or they live in the US,
or the States,
or the United States of America,
or the States.
Yeah. So, but we actually quite often say America, like that person lives in America,
Or
and
from America.
Yeah, he thinks that's weird. So that's just to explain what I meant about that. Because I was going to say to Laura, you go to America, and that's so I realised I do say that. But, right, so totally nothing to do with this case, but I just thought I'd explain that. So yeah, so the punishment for Shane. So she got the duct tape and she got the icy hot, and she told him to take his clothes off, and she bound his ankles and wrists while the girls watched. Then she put him in the corner by the front door and applied the icy hot to his penis while he screamed in pain. And that's the end of part 2.
That's awful. Like, why? Just why?
I don't understand. I mean, well, I do sort of know why, but I don't understand it. What she has with this naked thing. Like, I get, I mean, it's all about humiliation and control and whatnot, but I don't understand it, obviously.
Yeah. No.
But yeah, why have they got to dance naked? Why have they got to be outside naked? Why has Kathy got to be naked when she's doing the chores? Why is he being stripped off naked and putting icy hot on his penis? Like, why all this naked stuff? That's just horrific.
Awful.
It's just...
It really is. This woman's a piece of work,
And we haven't got to the worst of her crimes yet.
Really? Christ.
Yeah.
I mean, how much worse? Well, I mean, obviously it gets worse, but...
Yes, obviously it's going to get worse.
It's absolutely awful what I've heard already. If you've been listening to the first part and the second part, I mean, God only knows what the third part's going to bring.
Do you understand though why I did such a deep dive into it? Because that information is obviously out there, and I just thought it was important to...
Yeah, to get the whole story.
To get the whole story out and show you building up to it, and as horrible as it sounded, it's interesting in a weird sort of way.
Yeah, I mean,
to know that people are like that people do these kind of things.
And so far, how much she's actually got away with doing already, like, is horrific. I mean, the whole family. It's just
how one woman can be in control of so many people, of this whole family. Like she's in control of the 2 adults, 2 teenagers, a preteen, and then the baby. And just the way that she treats other people as well, even her parents and things like that. How has she got away with all this?
Exactly.
But yeah, we obviously haven't got to the worst of it yet. So it's going to be at least 3 parts. So there will be another part next week. No idea if we're going to have more after that. So we're just going to play it by ear.
Yes, and
I'll just let everybody know when, as I've said before, and I will put in the title which part we're at, so that you know where to start listening and when the end of it is.
Exactly. So thanks for joining us for the second part. We'll see you again next week for the third part.
Okay, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.